you whispered. Your hand lingered. You tried to touch me. You tried to seduce me.
The accusation lasted less than 5 minutes. The damage lasted 8 years. No cameras caught it. No witnesses heard it. No evidence proved it. But one sentence, spoken behind a closed door, was enough to end a man's career. He never touched her. He never spoke to her improperly. He never crossed the line. Still, he was dismissed. And 8 years later, when the lie finally came back to face him, the truth did something far worse than revenge. Before we continue, True Pulse stories move slowly because truth usually does. They're about power, silence, and the cost of being unheard. If you believe stories like this deserve time and attention, subscribe to True Pulse Narratives, not for comfort, for clarity. Daniel Moore believed in rules, not because they made him powerful, but because they made him invisible. That was the job. As a senior correctional officer, Daniel kept his distance. No jokes, no favors, no conversations longer than necessary. The inmates called him cold. His supervisors called him reliable. And for 12 years, reliability was enough, until Rachel Evans arrived. Rachel was serving a 7-year sentence. Smart, observant, angry. She noticed patterns. Which officers could be manipulated? Which ones wanted praise? Which ones wanted attention? Daniel wanted nothing. He never looked at her twice, never slowed his steps, never reacted when she spoke. That indifference hardened into resentment. To Rachel, it felt personal. The corridor was quiet. Midday, routine. Daniel escorted Rachel back from medical. Procedure followed, distance maintained, nothing happened. Except later, behind another door, Rachel reported him. She said he leaned too close. She said he whispered. She said his hand lingered. She cried while she spoke. That mattered. Daniel was removed from duty the same day. No interview. No chance to respond. Policy dictated immediate suspension. His badge was taken, his locker sealed, his name logged under pending review. He was told not to contact anyone. He was told to wait. Weeks passed, then months. The investigation consisted of questions Daniel never heard. No footage existed in that corridor. No witnesses were present. Rachel's account remained consistent. Daniel's denial was noted, quietly, and set aside. It arrived on a Tuesday, no return address worth remembering. Due to the seriousness of the allegation and the inability to conclusively disprove it, your employment is terminated effective immediately. Daniel read it twice, then a third time. He wasn't found guilty. He just wasn't cleared. It meant no reference, no appeal that mattered, no explanation that followed him. Background checks didn't list convictions. They listed concerns. That was enough. His wife tried to believe him, but belief has weight, and rumors are heavy. She stopped correcting people. Then she stopped defending him. Then she stopped asking questions. 6 months later, she left. Quietly. Daniel stopped checking the news, stopped answering calls, stopped explaining, because explanations didn't change outcomes. They only reopened wounds. He packed his uniforms into a box and placed it in storage. He didn't throw them away. Not yet. Rachel returned to her cell that night. Nothing changed for her. Daniel went home without a badge. Everything changed, and neither of them knew. This was only the beginning of the damage. Daniel didn't announce his dismissal. He let people find out on their own. At first, he told himself it was temporary, an administrative pause, a misunderstanding that would clear. He kept his alarm set for work, ironed his shirts, waited. The first week, colleagues texted, short messages, careful language. By the second week, the messages slowed. By the third, they stopped entirely. Daniel understood why. Association is risky. Silence is safer. He applied everywhere. Security firms, warehouses, transit companies. The interviews went well, until they didn't. The same pause always came. A polite smile, a delayed response, then nothing. One manager finally told him the truth. "It's not that we think you did it," the man said. "It's that we can't risk that you might have." The accusation never appeared online, but it existed everywhere. In lowered voices, in avoided eye contact, in conversations that ended early. Daniel learned how quickly a person becomes the thing people don't ask about. Rachel noticed changes too. The officers watched her carefully now, not with suspicion, with belief. Her story had weight. She felt it in the way her requests were handled, in the way her complaints were logged faster, in the way her name carried power. It surprised her. And then, she got used to it. Daniel requested access to the investigation report. He was denied. The reason was procedural. The effect was personal. He couldn't correct what he couldn't see. His father died that year. Heart attack. Daniel stood at the funeral while someone whispered behind him. Not loudly, not cruelly, just enough. His mother squeezed his hand, but she didn't look at him. Daniel finally opened the storage unit. He removed the uniforms, folded them, then stopped. His hands shook, not from anger, from grief, the kind that doesn't ask permission. He closed the box and left it there. Rachel's sentence continued. Days blended. Weeks passed. The accusation became something she rarely thought about. It had served its purpose. It had made her feel powerful, and power, once tasted, doesn't haunt. It settles. People asked Daniel why he didn't sue, why he didn't go public, why he didn't shout. He never answered directly. The truth was simple. No one listens to a man already labeled dangerous. Daniel learned how quickly dignity erodes when silence becomes official. Rachel learned how easy it is to walk away from a lie when it benefits you, and 8 years quietly began. Daniel stopped counting months. He counted expenses instead. Rent first, utilities next, food last. Pride didn't survive long after employment ended. He took work where questions weren't asked. Night shifts, temporary contracts, cash jobs that ended without notice. No uniforms, no authority, no protection, just hours traded for silence. Every background check reopened the wound. He learned to recognize the moment it happened. The smile tightened. The voice softened. The interview ended early. They never accused him. They didn't need to. Daniel used to correct people when they were wrong. He stopped. He used to meet eyes. He stopped that too. Because being seen invited questions, and questions invited explanations. Inside the prison, Rachel adapted. She stayed out of trouble. She took classes. She told her story once more, to a counselor. This time it sounded smaller, less dramatic, almost forgettable. The counselor nodded, moved on. Rachel rarely thought about Daniel now. The warder had become a concept, a consequence, something already paid for. She told herself prison made people lie. That was how she lived with it. One winter, Daniel slept in his car. Not long, just long enough to feel the edge. Cold does something to the mind. It strips thoughts down to essentials. Stay warm. Stay unnoticed. Survive the night. A former colleague reached out. Briefly, carefully. He told Daniel the file still existed. Untouched, inactive, waiting for nothing. Daniel thanked him and hung up. Some doors hurt more when reopened. Opportunity didn't arrive kindly. It arrived quietly. A small logistics startup needed someone to manage night operations. No public-facing role, no uniforms, just work. Daniel took it. He worked harder than required, stayed later than necessary, spoke less than expected. People noticed. Then they relied on him. Slowly. Promotions came. Responsibilities grew. Not because he was liked, because he was useful. Daniel didn't chase titles. He chased stability. Rachel counted days until release. Daniel counted proof of competence. Neither knew their paths were bending toward each other again. Time had not healed anything. It had only prepared the collision. Daniel never told anyone his full story. Not at work, not at home, not even when trust began to form. Some histories are easier to carry alone. The logistics firm expanded faster than expected. New contracts, new routes, new pressure. Daniel became the person people called when systems failed. He didn't panic. He didn't raise his voice. He fixed things. That mattered. Promotion followed promotion. Operations manager, regional lead, then executive oversight. Each step felt unreal, not triumphant, careful, as if stability might still disappear. Colleagues noticed something odd. Daniel never celebrated wins. No dinners, no speeches, no photos. He accepted success the way someone accepts weather, without expectation. Rachel's release date approached. The prison prepared her, job readiness classes, short workshops, encouragement that sounded practiced. She nodded through it all, but fear followed her. The outside world had no rules she understood. Rachel applied for jobs from prison. The answers came quickly. No, sometimes with politeness, mostly without explanation. She learned the truth early. A record closes doors before hands reach the handle. The board offered him the CEO position quietly. No ceremony, just a meeting. Daniel hesitated, not because he doubted his ability, because power felt dangerous. He accepted anyway. Not for prestige, for control. As CEO, Daniel wore tailored suits, but he felt no safer than before. Power, he learned, doesn't erase memory. It sharpens it. Release day arrived without drama. A gate opened. A gate closed. Rachel stepped into sunlight that felt unfamiliar. No one waited for her. She stood still for a moment, then walked forward. Freedom didn't feel like relief. It felt like exposure. Every form asked the same question. Have you ever been convicted of a felony? Rachel learned to pause before answering. The logistics company posting caught her eye. Entry level, administrative support, no customer interaction. She didn't recognize the CEO's name. She applied. Daniel sat in his office reviewing resumes. Rachel waited by her phone. Neither knew how close the past had come and how unforgiving the future would be. Rachel rehearsed her answers the night before. Not lies, just omissions. She practiced speaking slowly, calmly, like someone with nothing to hide. The office was quieter than she expected. Clean lines, glass walls, neutral colors meant to suggest order. She adjusted her jacket twice. Her name was called. Daniel looked up from the file and froze. It lasted less than a second, but it was enough. Rachel didn't recognize him immediately. Time had changed his face. Power had changed his posture. 3 interviewers. Standard questions. Rachel answered carefully. She spoke about responsibility, about lessons learned, about starting over. Daniel said nothing. He watched. It happened when she glanced at his nameplate. Her breath caught. Her voice faltered. She looked at him again and understood. The room felt suddenly too small. Daniel thanked the panel, dismissed them politely, closed the door behind them. The silence that followed was heavy. Rachel spoke first, not confidently, not strategically. She said his name. She said she remembered. She said she lied. The words fell fast now. 8 years pressed into minutes. He didn't interrupt, didn't correct her, didn't react. He listened the way someone listens when they've already lived the ending. Rachel apologized without expectation. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She asked for understanding. She said prison changed her. She said guilt followed her. She said she never thought she'd see him again. She asked him quietly what he wanted. Daniel stood, walked to the window, watched the city below. 8 years of effort reflected in glass and steel. The power had shifted, not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. And whatever happened next would leave no one untouched. Daniel didn't turn around right away. The city moved below him. Cars changed lanes. People crossed streets without knowing his name. Life continued. For years, Daniel had imagined this moment. Not this room, not this woman, just the idea of being believed. Now belief sat in his hands. He finally faced her. His voice was steady, not cold, not kind, measured. He asked her why, not emotionally, practically. Why him? Rachel answered honestly, because he wouldn't bend, because he wouldn't look at her, because power felt good when she had none. The truth landed harder than anger. Daniel spoke slowly. He told her what she never saw, the marriage that ended quietly, the nights spent in his car, the jobs that vanished without explanation. He didn't accuse. He informed. Each sentence felt final. She cried then, not loudly, the kind of crying that collapses inward. She said she didn't know. Daniel nodded. That too was part of it. She waited for anger, for humiliation, for punishment. Daniel offered none. He told her something else instead. "I can't protect you from consequences," he said, "but I also won't pretend this didn't happen." He opened her file again, read the line she dreaded, disclosure of prior incarceration. Then he closed it, not gently. Daniel did not shout. He did not threaten. He did not fire her, because she had never been hired. Instead, he told her the truth. He would report her confession, in writing, immediately, not to destroy her, but because silence had destroyed him. Rachel understood then. This was worse than rejection. This was exposure, not public humiliation, accountability. She asked if there was anything she could do. Daniel answered without hesitation. "Tell the truth," he said. "All of it." Rachel left the office quietly. Daniel sat back down alone. For the first time in years, he didn't feel relief, only certainty. Rachel left the CEO office and walked through the building like a ghost. The air felt heavier now. Her hands were shaking, not from fear alone, from the weight of the choice she had made. Daniel wrote the report immediately. He didn't draft it slowly. He didn't wait. He didn't let time soften it. He wrote the facts, the accusation, the dismissal, the years of lost work, the ruined life. He attached Rachel's confession. He signed it. Then he sent it to the Internal Ethics Department and to the prison authority. The management team gathered, not because of drama, because policy demanded it. They read the report. They listened to Daniel's explanation. The mood in the room shifted. It was not outrage. It was calculation. They reopened the case, and not because they cared, because the paper demanded it. A new investigation began, one that did not feel like a second chance. It felt like a slow, inevitable machine. Rachel received the news through a letter, not a phone call, not a visit, a letter. She read it twice. Then she sat on the curb outside the building and stared at nothing. She wasn't charged for the original lie. That would have been difficult to prove. She was charged for false testimony and obstruction of justice. The laws were clear. The punishment was severe. And because she had already served time, the judge treated the new charges as aggravating. Rachel was arrested again. Not dramatically, not with cameras. Just a hand on the arm, a nod from an officer. The kind of action that feels ordinary until it happens to you. The logistics company released a brief statement. They said, "We do not tolerate dishonesty. We support due process. We have cooperated fully with authorities." No mention of Daniel. No mention of the truth. No mention of the years he lost. Only policy. Only words. Daniel did not celebrate. He didn't feel vindicated. He felt empty. He realized the truth did not bring him peace. It brought him something worse. Confirmation. The trial was quiet. No cameras, no public interest. Just a judge, a prosecutor, a defense attorney. Rachel sat in a chair that felt too small. She looked older than her years. She looked tired, not from prison, from living. She was sentenced to another 3 years. No mercy, no rehabilitation, just punishment. The judge said it was necessary, that it was meant to deter others. Rachel did not react. She only stared forward, as if she could see the past and the future at once. Daniel watched the news report from his office. It was short, a line about the case, a line about the sentence. No mention of his name, no mention of what he lost. The truth had returned, but it had not restored anything. It had only continued the damage. Daniel expected the guilt to be obvious. He expected the moment he knew he was finally heard. He expected relief. Instead, he felt something else, a silence that sounded like regret. Word spread in the company, not about Rachel's return to prison, about Daniel's role. People talked quietly. Speculation replaced respect, not because they disagreed with him, because they feared being connected to him. A CEO is supposed to be untouchable. Daniel suddenly felt touched. His office felt colder now, not because of temperature, because it reminded him of the life he lost, the life he never got back. He sat at his desk and stared at the chair across from him, the one he had imagined Rachel sitting in. He imagined telling her to stand, to leave, to accept the consequences. But she was gone now. Rachel's family visited her once. A brother, a sister. They came with folded hands. Not angry, just hollow. They didn't ask for forgiveness. They didn't demand justice. They wanted to know if she was still there, inside the shell of her. Rachel wrote to Daniel, not to beg, not to plead, to say something simple, to say what she should have said 8 years ago. I destroyed your life. I don't know how to fix it, but I wanted you to know I'm still here. I am still alive. Daniel read the letter twice, then placed it in the drawer. He didn't answer. He didn't know what to say. The board questioned Daniel, not about his performance, about the company's reputation, about whether his decisions had damaged the brand. Daniel explained. He told them the truth, but the board didn't want truth. They wanted safety. They asked Daniel to step down, not as punishment, as a strategic decision. They said the company needed to move forward. Daniel understood the meaning. He was too complicated, too controversial, too human. He resigned, not because he was forced, because he had learned what it meant to be punished by silence. He handed over the keys, the title, the power. He walked out of the building the same way he had walked out of the prison years before, quietly. Rachel's new sentence ended up longer than her original time. Because of the way the system works, it punishes the same person twice for the same wound. Daniel realized the truth now. Even when you are right, you can still lose. The truth had returned. It had not brought healing. It had brought more loss. And the cost was paid in quiet steps, in empty rooms, and in lives that could never be repaired. Daniel didn't go home. Not at first. He walked until the city felt like a maze he could disappear into. He didn't know where to go. He only knew he didn't want to return to the empty office. A few people still reached out, quietly. A former colleague, a former friend. They didn't ask for stories. They just wanted to know if he was okay. Daniel thanked them, but he didn't answer fully, because there was no way to explain how it feels to be right and still lose everything. Rachel returned to the same facility, the same routines, the same walls. She felt smaller now, not physically, emotionally. She had been punished once, and then punished again, for telling the truth. One night, Rachel sat on her bunk and stared at the wall. She remembered Daniel's face, the way he looked at her when she confessed, not with anger, with exhaustion. She realized then that she had never really thought about the man, only the power she held and the power she lost. She cried quietly, not for herself, for the life she destroyed. Rachel wrote to Daniel again, but he never responded, not because he didn't receive them, because he couldn't bear to read them. The letters sat unopened in a drawer, like evidence, like a reminder. Daniel returned to his old storage unit, the one where he kept his uniforms. He opened the box. The uniform was folded neatly. He stared at it. For the first time, he understood the real tragedy. The job wasn't the only thing he lost. He lost the version of himself that believed the world was fair. He lost the belief that truth mattered. He lost the belief that a person could be innocent and still survive. Daniel walked out of the storage unit and into the night. He didn't go back to his apartment. He didn't call anyone. He walked until he reached a bridge. The city lights reflected on the water below. He stood there for a long time, not looking for a solution, looking for an ending. Daniel looked down at the water, not with anger, with the quiet acceptance of someone who has been defeated by a world that never cared to hear his side. The story doesn't show what happens next, because the next moment is not meant for comfort. It is meant to leave the audience with the weight of the truth. And the question, what happens when the truth is not enough? Daniel stood on the bridge. The water moved below like it had always moved. People walked past him without noticing. Cars passed without slowing. The world kept going. He felt like he had become invisible again, not because he wanted to be, but because he had no other option. In his pocket was Rachel's final letter. He hadn't opened it. He didn't know why. Maybe because he feared what it would do. Maybe because he didn't want her words to become another weight. He stood there silent, with the letter pressed against his palm. Daniel realized something that hurt more than the loss of his job. He realized that truth by itself doesn't protect you. Truth doesn't rebuild what was taken. Truth doesn't replace years of lost time. Truth doesn't undo the way people look at you after one accusation. Truth only proves you were right. And being right didn't save him. Rachel returned to her cell. She didn't become a better person overnight. She didn't find redemption. She didn't become a lesson. She became quiet, a shadow of herself, and the prison became her world again. But now it wasn't just prison. It was her consequence, her permanent reminder. Daniel finally called his mother. He didn't say much. He apologized for not being there. She didn't ask him why. She only told him, "You don't have to carry it alone." He listened, but he didn't respond, because he had no words that could change what happened. The next morning, Daniel returned to his apartment. He placed Rachel's letter on the table. He didn't open it. He sat down and stared at the wall. He thought about the life he had once had, and the life he would never get back. And he understood the cruel truth. Some wounds don't heal. They only become part of who you are. The lie that ruined Daniel's life was simple. A single accusation, a single moment of belief, a single sentence that no one questioned. And 8 years later, the truth returned. But it didn't bring justice. It brought more loss. It brought confirmation that the world can be cruel, even when you are innocent. The case went cold, and the hope they left behind never thawed.